Okay, so data centers, no secret, they're already under a fair amount of pressure when it comes to sustainability. But then if we add in this huge AI explosion, which no one kind of knows how big it's going to be, but it is significant. And also, I mean, cloud data centers been around for a while, but I think there's significant expansion, more of those being built out. So just, yeah, how would you characterize that landscape at the moment?
Yeah, so yeah, that's absolutely correct. Actually, data centers themselves account nearly for 1% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. And in some cases, cooling of the data center, as we all know, use up to 40% of the total energy of data center needs, right? So that actually is becoming a real problem for society. So modern day cloud infrastructure, I would say both from hyperscalers and top green data center providers, they handle energy requirements and carbon emissions in a very sophisticated and efficient manner. And so in most cases, these providers start to get their data centers fully on renewable energy. I think that's point number one. And what they sometimes even do, Philip, is to have the heat generated by the IT system plowed back into powering cities, and thereby almost creating 100% zero carbon emission center. So on one side, the strain on data centers is there. On the other side, I think a lot of data center providers, including hyperscalers, are finding very smart solutions, in order to basically become almost kind of an emission-free data center concept, within their state.
Okay, and also AI, clearly everyone talking about the massive expansion of data center needed, but on the plus side, AI is already being used and there's much more potential for it to be used within the data center itself to help improve the efficiency, the way that the data center is operated. So perhaps you can just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, with the advent of AI, I would say both central data centers and kind of more data centers on the edge will create a huge strain on data center energy consumption. Now, I have to say, on one side, AI and LLMs themselves will become more efficient, right? So I think the impact on data centers will be there, but it will not be as big as it is initially because they will become more tailored, they will become more customized to the individual use case of the specific industry that AI has to find a solution on. So I foresee that the strain will go down, but the strain definitely will be there. And here, I think AI itself, has a potential to become not only a source of issues, but also a source of savings, right? So AI itself now is being used already by some hyperscalers to optimize and bring efficiency to the energy consumption of a data center, right? So the biggest players, in, the big three, big four, are, as we speak, developing AI-powered solutions in their data centers to reduce the volume of energy dedicated to cooling, to heating, to power. And one example I can give, because that's public knowledge, is Google DeepMind. They're developing a way to reduce the volume of energy dedicated to cooling by almost 40% in the data centers of Google that actually are using Google DeepMind. So you see, AI is both a kind of a source, but also a source of issue, but also a source of solution for the carbon emission of the data centers.
Yeah, and I'm guessing for reasons you've just outlined there, but also because of the I guess, economy of scale and the efficient use of IT resources, cloud data centers are potentially much more sustainable than many on-prem data centers. I say whether it's economies of scale and the fact that they're being used much more efficiently than a half-empty on-prem data center. Just explain, if you like, a bit more about why cloud data centers can be so sustainable compared to.
Absolutely. So the cloud data centers are, I would say, almost 100% optimized in terms of their utilization, both in terms of power, consumption, as well as heating. And like that, they're really at a constant optimized PoE level in terms of what they consume and what they basically kind of emit. And I would say there is this cloud neutral data center pact, this kind of pact that will come out that will push all these hyperscalers even further to ensure that the data centers are compliant with optimal power usage and kind of standards, and therefore even pushing them further down the boundaries. But generally speaking, if you talk about optimizing your data center consumption from a greenhouse emission point of view, the hyperscalers and the cloud data centers are the ones that are most optimized, and are also typically the companies right now that are investing most into even optimizing it further and to become even completely kind of green.
Okay, but I guess it's still worthwhile when you're looking at the issue of sustainability as a potential customer of a cloud data center. It's still worthwhile asking a few questions, looking at exactly what because they're not all equally
No.
far advanced or whatever. So there is a bit of variety in terms of the sustainability level of cloud providers.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of inspecting before expecting. So I would advise potential cloud supplier customers to basically use foresight and to basically kind of look at their own sustainability goals, look at what sustainability goals therefore they need to have on their business cloud supplier, and then really inspect their business cloud suppliers. In the end, their supplier will be wholly responsible, how power is regulated and managed in their data center. But, you as a company need to inspect and see whether they are really trusted and a vetted organization, how they promote the use of renewable energy, how they support low and zero waste, kind of emission strategy. And, how do they guarantee that basically they will continue this and improving this and basically therefore supporting your own business kind of emission goals. So for me, it's a matter of inspecting before expecting, and both I would say several partnerships you can build to help baseline and achieve carbon reduction. Data is there. Data has been published by most of those organizations, but inspecting, double checking, understanding kind of how the data is calculated, and also how they project their emissions in the future, for me would be step number one before actually making a final selection there.
And I guess in terms of the scopes 1 to 3, which a lot of people use, to do with carbon footprint, specifically sustainability. Scope 3 is the important bit here for, as you say, you can evaluate potential partners, but I guess even when you're then partnering with people, you can still use scope 3 in particular to understand their own carbon footprint and ways in which you can encourage them to improve or work together to improve the situation. So scope 3, I know it's difficult potentially to get that information, but it is quite important if you want to have peace of mind that your partners are right for sustainability objectives.
Yeah. So if you look at the challenges, between scope 1, 2, and 3, I think you're absolutely right. Scope 3 emission in particular, I think, is the one where we have most of the challenges, the ones that are attributable to, value and supply chain. Going back to you as a business, how do you use your infrastructure, your cloud supplier, and they follow several different categories. So you cannot implement a unified strategy as a business, in terms of scope 3, but then your scope 3 for your cloud supplier is, I think, where you need to kind of really, like I said before, double check, inspect, and also see what kind of data, your supplier is providing as part of their, environmental and social governance reporting. Those are typically good data points for you to look at to see how serious they are, what plans they have, and whether those plans have been vetted by, several instances, so that at least, they're not just on paper, but they're actually truly being executed.
Yeah, because I know certainly in the past, greenwashing as a concept existed. So, people say, we're doing all these marvelous things, but they're perhaps not always doing it, or they're, slightly misleading statements. So it's very important, as you say, that you do actually sort of look for proof that people are following a sustainability agenda, as opposed to just saying, yes, we've got renewable energy, and yes, we're doing all these marvelous things. Actions rather than talk is what matters.
Absolutely. I think here, when it comes to greenwashing, the key is data disclosure. What kind of data is being disclosed? One is and we've all seen this, right? Specifically at the start, is that people make, big intentions, nice PowerPoints, good use cases, but then you need to scratch underneath the surface and say, okay, what really data is being disclosed? And it's always interesting to look at kind of the ESG reports of companies from last year and this year. And, sometimes it's even almost the same. So that means there is no evolution done in terms of their kind of their green agenda. And actually what they're doing is a little bit of greenwashing. So data disclosure, evolution, ESM reporting, inspecting, I think would be quite important for me there.
And there's also impending and or actual, I guess, bits of legislation that are potentially going to help level the playing field in terms of, people will all have to report to a similar standard, so you can actually compare as opposed to relying on people's interpretation or,
exactly.
But there'll be actual requirements to report certain things so that you can, as I say, compare and contrast. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think, so here in Europe, we have the EU Energy Efficiency Directive. I think it will drive specifically data center cloud industry forward, I believe. I think what is important is how quickly people do accept this and, you know, show their way to adapt to these regulations. You know, I think it's all around disclosure of data, disclosure of plans, tracking, seeing evolution and improvement, and transparency. Right. I mean, I think, you know, the more transparency also in our industry data center, the better, right? Our clients themselves are now being required to share their impact footprints and plans. And so that means, you know, getting data out of their system, out of their ecosystem, publishing it in compliance, you know, to the latest, you know, kind of efficiency acts, for me is going to be the litmus test to see, you know, how much of these things are vaporware and how much of things are real. Who are the people that really build plans and are executing against them versus who are people that are just sending nice presentations, but actually not really acting upon it. So I think all these legislations, frankly, is going to be goodness, and it's going to kind of separate the boys from the men, if you like.
Okay, and while I have you, and just before we finish, because we've obviously sort of focused in on the sustainability aspect, data centers, but are there any other sort of trends that you can see out there when it comes to either cloud and or data centers for over the next 12, 18 months? You know, what else should people be aware of or, you know, look out for?
I think what we see more is, so the first wave of AI will bring, basically, it will bring your data to the AI engine. So in other words, how do I bring all my data into central data centers where I can do the processing and basically run the LMMs? Second trend that we see is that you bring your processing power more closer to where the data is generated. And so we'll see here in the future, you know, hybrid cloud and cloud data centers, on-prem data centers, and kind of mini edge data centers as well, where more customized LLMs are basically going to run more tailored type of AI applications and sit closer to where the data is generated. So in a way, if you like, you know, IoT is on its way back, and there will be a bit more of a balance in between what is really done, you know, on the edge, what is done on-prem, and what is done into a cloud data center. So that is a kind of overall trend and tendency that I see as we go to the hypercycle of data centers. On cloud, as a consequence, what I see is basically more and more FinOps and cloud economics. How do I manage this complex landscape and different environments, and how can I optimize the bill of my cloud spend and my data center spend? And, you know, obviously CIOs and CTOs need to go back to their CFOs and explain and prove the initial business case they built when they originally got their approval to move to cloud. So those are the kind of 2-3 trends that I see in the market, and AI is actually accelerating that.
Okay, I'm just following up on the edge. I know everyone you talk to potentially has a slightly different definition of what the edge means, but what you're alluding to there, so that we're not talking sort of street corner data centers, they're going to be reasonably significant size data centers, but still, as you say, more localized as opposed
to absolutely true. Okay. So we'll see a bit more of a balance. I'm not saying that we're going to get the complete, like in the 90s, we go back into that space. Not at all, but I think we'll see a bit more of a balance triggered by, you know, data requirements and things like AI, definitely.
Okay, it's been lovely to chat, some brilliant insights into what's going on sustainability-wise and more generally. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, likewise. Thank you for having me, Philip.